Hey everybody, Eric Parker here. Welcome back to the Valley of Death. Honestly, before I get started today, I wanted to take a brief moment to talk about this painting behind me. We had someone part of our community here at the clubhouse in Augusta, Georgia. His name is Chase Lanier. He's an artist and an educator. And he was really a major part of our team for a long period of time. And he had created this painting because he was actually wanting to articulate this kind of the same fall, the same concept around the Valley of Death. And if you look at the painting, I think it's very close to what we're all sort of going through at this point, where you have this sort of predictable curve where you're super excited about things. And then, it just falls apart, and the low is sort of lower than where you started there on the second painting. And then ultimately you get to this place where, right here, you go up the curve again on the other side, and you actually get higher than you were before. And, I've always enjoyed this piece. Chase actually donated it to us here so that we could keep it around to help inspire everybody who was going through the Valley of Death moment. And so I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. If you'd like to see more of Chase's work, I know he's on Instagram at Chase Lanier Art, so you can find him there. But that's also a good segue into kind of what I wanted to go through on today's episode. I wanted to initially talk about if I had any do-overs, what would I do differently? And I realized when I was putting that together that I actually don't believe in do-overs. I don't believe in the concept of regrets. Realistically, I am the byproduct of my choices. Our company is the byproduct of the collective choices of all of the founders and all the team members that we've had. And I think it's really important to accept that you can't do things over, and find the lessons that you can be grateful for within each one of those things. And so instead, I wanted to retitle today's episode as do-overs and thank yous, because really, if you learn something from anything that might not have gone optimally, then you've actually had a really good outcome. And I think that's the other way of looking at how you get through the Valley of Death. So introspectively, like really trying to look at what are the big lessons and the big do-overs. I think I'd put the first one as and again, it starts with a thank you, because one of our co-founders invested a significant amount of money to help launch what we were doing. After we had built the initial pitch app as a proof of concept, then that capital came in, and I think there's this over exuberance that happens in probably every startup. We had some market traction. We had a really novel idea. We had some great things that were happening with it. And so we just sort of immediately went into this phase where we're like, okay, well, three of us as co-founders, let's take like a good, healthy salary to do this thing that probably wasn't justified at the time, given where things were at as a company. And so after a few months, realizing that revenues were not going to catch up fast enough to give us the runway to make things happen, scaled back a lot on team compensation, looked at other ways of restructuring how we go about doing things. And that's one of the things that really helped us preserve cash flow and runway so that we could keep going with the company. And to me, I think that there's such a valuable lesson in there. And it's one that, frankly, I hope I can one day fully take to heart, which is that, and I think we have a tendency to do this in our personal lives as well as in our companies. It's like when resources expand, we expand our consumption of them. And if we really want to create wealth and create great value for people, I think it's critically important to realize that no matter how successful your company is going, and no matter how much capital you might have in the bank, how much cash flow you have, that you always have to operate in a very lean manner. I think like companies have a natural tendency to bloat, and that is nothing against like the people that work at companies. Like I hear a lot of times when you'll have this sort of toxic perspective that a certain percentage of employees do all the things, and then everybody else is just sort of like not as productive. And I actually think that there's a massive fallacy in that, because I think that most of the time what it comes down to is those people that think of themselves as the highly productive individuals are not actually managing, communicating, and collaborating and coordinating with a team as effectively as they could. There's like, we all talk about this idea that there's the people in school that's like, okay, I'm the person that's going to be the team leader, the project leader, or whatever. But every single time I end up doing it by myself. And is that because everybody else sucks, or is it because you don't know how to work with other people very well? Maybe it's a trust issue that you have. Maybe it's a lack of communication skills that you have, or a lack of, monitoring things and just basic communication to help people stay accountable to each other in a process. And like at the core, that's like the fundamental skill of a company, right? It's how do you get multiple people to interact with one another in a collaborative manner towards a common mission. So that's sort of like do-over number one, is just wishing that I had in the past, like observing that action of maybe not managing resources as efficiently as is possible, maybe being ready too soon to celebrate a victory or a win. But the thank you underneath all of that is that, I continue to learn the importance of communicating regularly with my team, with helping us set expectations together on how to go about doing that. So, next up, I would say that the other big do-over for me, for anybody that knows anything about the history of our organization, it started as the clubhouse, which is the space that I'm sitting in right now. The clubhouse is a co-working space and an incubator, and really, like I've fought like all these definitions, because to me it was much more of a community and a cultural movement that I had tried to create with a number of other people, to try to motivate the people of my hometown in Augusta to be more collaborative, to learn to innovate more, to trust themselves, to create businesses and go after big ideas. And really, I always looked at it as here's the permission slip that you have to go out into the world and do something audacious. I think if more people in our world had that mentality, then we'd just have a fundamentally better world. And so then, in running the clubhouse and getting more involved in building startups and doing workforce development programs, things like that. Then we created Make Startups, which is kind of like now more we refer to it as the Make Startups Institute, which is like a nonprofit focused on research and education and credentialing around what makes startups succeed, and trying to provide the underlying proof of that, so that it is easier for the organizations that support startups to get funded, and for the startups themselves to access capital when they might not have otherwise been able to get it. And so that mission resulted in the creation of MakeStartups.com, which was a software company that began automating a lot of the IT layer underneath how to enable the mission of that nonprofit. And so, and then MakeStartups.com created Co-Founder OS, which I've talked about a few times, which is that first tool underneath everything to enable this mission. And so that's how those are all related. And as a byproduct, to me, it's always felt like this sort of like big umbrella. Like, okay, right, everything sits underneath. Well, there it is, center. But everything's underneath this one core mission, which is how do you give more people permission to pursue their dreams, and so there's this gray area that has existed between every single organization that is there. But if you look at it, it's fundamentally at least three distinct organizations, and maybe there's some consolidation that could happen where it's two. But I've operated those mistakenly, I believe, in a way where there's too much blending of responsibilities that exists between them, and therefore it created a lot of confusion of roles. Who's responsible for what, and everybody. I mean, I love the concept of a hybridized career, your responsibilities in the work that you do, where you touch on a lot of things. I think it does provide a richness to the exercise, but it also prevents specialization and expertise within the role, and the overlap creates confusion as far as who is the actual owner of a given task, so that there is somebody that will wake up day in and day out and say, I'm responsible to make sure that this thing happens. And so, what I've done, and this is really kind of one of the first activities entering the valley of death, was to begin to finally like peel away the organization structures from one another, so that each one can have a clear path forward. And it's like I think that all things aside of how anyone thinks about the man, good or bad, like Elon Musk has probably set a bad example for startup founders and for corporate America, where people think that they can work across multiple organizations at the same time. And I don't disagree that on whether he's been able to do that, but I think that underneath it all, the reason he's been able to do that is because he's set up some clear like organizational leadership in each one of these places that focuses on the different things. And so like what I'm appreciative of is that I've had a board at the nonprofit that has stepped up to help me navigate how I can clean these lines up, and that ultimately I think I'm in a place right now where each company is beginning to emerge with its own mission responsibilities and chain of command. And I think that's going to make everyone stronger. I think that's going to actually help each organization grow. So yeah, what else am I really thankful for? We started the concept of doing this ecosystem tour at the start of the year. We had this grand ambition that we were going to visit 24 startup ecosystems, meet the support organization leaders that were trying to grow their community, as well as hopefully some founders that were in that area. And just honestly, really serendipitously, and this is where I want to tell everybody, like, you really have to trust your gut on certain things. We have not been able to visit 24 cities. Like, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how much work it is to not only have two founders travel to a city and schedule all of the tours with everybody and the interviews and so forth, but then to get that video and run it through the post-production cycle to get videos published. But at the end of the day, and I don't know exactly where we're at, but I think we've covered pretty close to at least halfway of that mark. But like literally video one is validation of the concept, because in our very first video, we got to meet Doug Irwin and a lot of the team in Reno, Nevada that's doing work. And if you haven't checked it out, you really should check out what's going on in Reno's startup ecosystem, because I think that they've accomplished some pretty amazing growth that can be an example for the rest of the country. But in that meeting, if you're unfamiliar, there's an organization called Right to Start, and Right to Start works with leaders across the country. They basically, I'd say primarily at the state level, but they look at things at the national and local levels as well. But they work to get essentially a Right to Start Act passed, which that puts some legitimate focus of state governments behind how to support entrepreneurship. That they sort of codify that that we as citizens have a fundamental right to start a business, and that the state should put certain things into play to make that easier and more accessible to everyone. And so Nevada was they passed their Right to Start Act, and they hired the first sort of state director to oversee this, and we happened to meet her, Kaima Part. Gosh, Kaima, I'm sorry if I slaughtered how to pronounce your last name, but anyway, Kaima and I just sort of understood each other in talking about the need to standardize data around entrepreneurship. And even though, we're now 11 months later from that initial conversation, the time that she has taken with me to help unpack and understand the work that we're doing and how we can drive impacts around that has been incredible. And so these relationships that you can form as you pull yourself out of your own bubble to a degree and you meet other people, that can be profound. And I think that these relationships are the thing that are going to ultimately drive the success of our company. And for that, I'm really, like, I feel a tremendous responsibility to make sure that we live up to all the things that we say we can do. And I just really appreciate when I find somebody who understands that. And so when you find anybody that understands your why, you should spend however much time you can to flesh it out with them, to learn how to communicate it better, to see how you can amplify the strategy and the tactics underneath that. And so yeah, I mean, I'm grateful to Victor and Catherine and Jason and everybody over at Right to Start for all the hard work that they did to make that happen. I'm grateful to my co-founder Grace Belangia for one, giving our company the runway to pursue a crazy idea, and two, for her tireless efforts to set up meetings and tours like what we did with Doug and the team in Reno, and many more than I could ever articulate. And I'm grateful to Kaima for hearing us and what we're trying to do, and spending the time to unpack it. I guess I'm still unpacking it, obviously. I love what I do. I do. I look forward to doing it for the rest of my life and seeing what kind of difference we can make with it. So, I think that's it. Going to go to a hot chocolate social, celebrate the Christmas time after this. I hope that the clubhouse wins the Christmas tree contest at the Georgia Cyber Center. Who knows? But anyway, look forward to talking to you again soon. Take it easy. Bye.